Last year, I got my official certification as a nutritionist. Before I started that, I thought I already knew a lot about nutrition, being the health nerd that I am. But now I know how much I did not know. So in this video, I'll go over the most surprising and controversial nutrition facts going around that I used to believe, and you probably still believe, and debunk them so that you know better sooner. Let's get into it. This first learning is something that made figuring out what I should eat so much easier, because it's about a food that is incredibly versatile for breakfast, as a snack, for a full meal, and it's one of the best protein sources out there. But I used to think, and you probably still do, that we're not supposed to eat too much of this food because it would make us sick by raising our blood cholesterol. You might be guessing by now what I'm talking about. Eggs. Or more specifically, the myth that you're not supposed to eat more than 3 to 5 eggs a week. And this myth comes from the actual fact that there's a good amount of cholesterol in the egg yolk. And high levels of the bad cholesterol in our blood is not healthy. So people used to figure that if you eat cholesterol from eggs, that's going to raise your cholesterol in your blood, which is not something that you would want. However, more recent research shows that the cholesterol from food has basically no or very, very little influence on the cholesterol in your blood. But instead, that cholesterol in your blood is made by your liver and mostly influenced by eating saturated fats, not by eating cholesterol that's in eggs. So eggs are not harmful at all. On the contrary, eggs are little powerhouses because they have a lot of vitamins like vitamin D or B12, and it's one of the best protein sources you can find because it's a complete protein, meaning that it gives your body all the essential amino acids that you need. Plus, they're incredibly versatile and easy to prepare. However, while eggs are an amazing breakfast option, just having 2 eggs on toast or with avocado is not the smartest idea because that's not enough protein, which is why the common advice to add some protein to your meals is relatively useless, because just 2 eggs for breakfast or a quinoa bowl with some nuts and some chickpeas for lunch does not give your body enough protein, because you should aim for at least 20 grams of protein per meal, if not 30. How much protein you exactly need depends on your weight and your activity levels, but a rule of thumb is that you should aim for at least 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And just for reference, 2 eggs for breakfast gives you about 12 to 14 grams of protein, and a slice of toast maybe 3, depending on the type of bread. So that is not nearly enough. And no, you do not only need this much protein if you do weight training or if you want to bulk up. On the contrary, everyone, especially if you exercise, but even if you don't do much exercise, needs a proper amount of protein. First, because you'll never fully feel full if you don't give your body enough protein, because protein is the most important macronutrient that your body needs. So it'll just keep you giving hunger signals until you give it enough protein. And now looking back, I know that I did not even nearly get enough protein as I needed, because I just kept on snacking all day long. I did snack on healthy stuff, but I had to snack all the time because I was never really full, because I didn't know shit about protein, and I thought that just adding an egg to my bowl of pasta or having a protein bar as a dessert would be sufficient. But looking back now, I'm guessing that I didn't even get half the protein that I needed, which is most probably also the reason why I did not make basically any progress in the gym. Because even though ever since falling in love with fitness 10-ish years ago, I was pretty consistent with working out, I was never really lean. I was relatively skinny, yes, but I was kind of skinny fat. And I could never really see any abs or any other muscles for that matter, because my body did not have the protein to build the muscles. And protein for our muscles is basically like the bricks for a house, because carbs and fat from your diet only can turn into energy or body fat, but not into muscle tissue. So please, for every meal, focus on a good amount, sufficient amount of protein. And one wonderful source of protein is dairy. However, there was a time when I had sworn off dairy because I heard that it's inflammatory and nobody wants inflammation. But now I know that unless you're actually allergic or intolerant towards milk protein or lactose, the sugar in milk, dairy products are not inflammatory per se. Except for acne, there are studies that show a linkage between dairy consumption and acne, but except for acne, dairy is not inflammatory. At least there is no clear evidence for that. Low-fat dairy products like low-fat Greek yogurt or cottage cheese have so many beneficial effects on your body, and that's why after I started my nutrition training, I added a lot of dairy back into my diet, and I eat Greek yogurt every day, cottage cheese, regular cheese, feta, all of that stuff. And speaking of dairy, cow milk has a pretty bad reputation, which is why all of the health girlies and boys, some of them at least, switched to plant milks such as oat milk, because many people started to think, including me, that oat milk is healthier than cow milk. Obviously, some people just switched because of animal welfare, that's something else, but me at least, switched to oat milk because I thought it was better for my body. However, from a health perspective, oat milk is not the best choice because it's basically pure starch that you're drinking. And when you just drink starch without having any fats or protein along with it, that's gonna make your blood sugar levels spike and then drop. And that's not something you would want because that causes inflammation and many other negative health effects. Plus, very often in those oat milks, there's a lot of additives like seed oils, which have been shown to promote inflammation. Cow milk, on the other side, unless you're intolerant towards lactose or can't handle milk protein that well, or you struggle with acne, has actually more health benefits than oat milk because it's got more protein, it's got more vitamins, and it does not lead to blood sugar spikes. I'm not saying you can't drink oat milk anymore. I'm just saying drink it only if you want to because you like the taste of it, but not because you think it's the healthier option. And I do recommend to either just have oat milk with something else that has protein and or fat in it, so with your breakfast, or to switch to another plant-based milk like almond milk or pea milk. Another trend that has been going around over the last couple of years is intermittent fasting. And I used to intermittent fast too because I heard so many good things about it, that it's, for example, promoting autophagy, which helps with fighting inflammation, bad inflammation in your body, and many other benefits, and that can be true. However, recent research suggests that this positive effect of intermittent fasting mostly applies to men. And also for men, it's not that advisable if you're in a high stress phase, because fasting, being hungry basically, means stress for your body. Yes, stress can be good. For example, if you work out, that's a lot of stress on your body too. And by stressing your body consciously, that helps your body to adapt to that stress, which makes it stronger. But if you're already under a lot of stress, mental stress, for example, and then you put your body onto physical stress by working out, for example, and then also fast for too long, that might raise your cortisol, your stress hormone levels, to an unhealthy extent, which has so many negative effects on your body and your mind. And especially for women, Dr. Stacy Sims talks about this a lot. Intermittent fasting for longer than 12-ish hours, maybe 14 tops, is not advisable. Especially if you work out in the morning on an empty stomach, which is something you shouldn't do. You should always eat something before working out as a woman, because otherwise it's gonna mess up your hormones, which is the same for intermittent fasting. If you don't eat something in the morning, your cortisol levels don't go down as they should. So if you eat something after waking up, that food is gonna help your body regulate its cortisol levels. If you do want to do some intermittent fasting as a woman, current research suggests that you do this by eating dinner early and having breakfast early, and not the other way around. That's what I used to do, and it did have negative effects on my body, so I don't recommend it. This next thing I'm 100% sure you've heard many times in your life, which is that salt is bad, and that's because it's high in sodium, and too much sodium can be harmful to your health, which is true. However, it's also necessary for your health, especially if you work out regularly. It is very important that you do eat enough salt or sodium, which is an essential mineral that your body needs, just not too much. Obviously don't overdo it, but do use salt in your meals. Unless you have problems with your heart, that's something else, then you should always consult with your doctor. But if you're a heart-healthy person, you do need salt. Don't be afraid to use salt. And this is especially the case if you have low blood pressure like me, of which one symptom is having cold hands all the time. And it's even more important to eat enough salt. As mentioned before, protein is the most important macronutrient, especially to feel satiated. However, in order to feel satiated and not to overeat or binge, you also need fat. Yes, fat has a lot of calories, but healthy fats are very important to keep your bodily functions going, including especially your hormone health. But not only that, also it helps you to feel satiated after eating something. So there's a reason why they say that you should eat a balanced meal, which consists of protein, healthy fats, and carbs. And without protein and fats, your body cannot survive. Carbs, on the other hand, are not necessarily important for survival. So when you want to cut calories, one easy way to do so is to go on a low-carb diet. But don't cut out carbs entirely. And don't do low-carb for too long, because your body, or more specifically your brain, needs carbs. Especially, again, if you're a woman, and or especially when you're stressed, 130 grams per day, which is about 2 to 3 bagels. If you do want to cut calories, yes, going low carb is a relatively easy way to cut down on calories because your body needs protein and fat. But if you do this, make sure that you get at least a minimum amount of carbs. And if you do a low carb diet, try to not do it for too long. Because whether it's a banana or a Ben & Jerry's half-baked, my personal favorite, there are no good or bad foods. You're allowed to eat everything that's out there. And you should eat at least most of the natural foods that are out there. Because there's a reason why there's so many different foods available in nature. Because the more different foods that you eat, natural foods, the better it is for your gut health. And your gut health is like the key to your overall physical and also mental health. So adding in as many different foods, including herbs and spices, to your diet is basically the best thing that you can do to improve your health. And while things like sugar your body does not need at all, if you like eating sweet stuff, have sweet stuff. Not demonizing certain food groups, it's so important to keep a healthy relationship to food. And I cannot stress this enough. You might have heard this before, but it's really important to eat whatever you want. Just maybe don't overdo it. A very good rule is the 80-20 rule, meaning eat well 80% of the time and eat whatever you want 20% of the time. And I noticed this effect myself. I always used to think I have the healthiest relationship to food because I just ate whatever I wanted and I was still pretty healthy. But then I had an inflammation in my body and I cut out certain food groups, and for a while I did not eat any sweets. And that was when my relationship to food started to not be so well anymore. And then especially when I wanted to get lean, get shredded, and to lose a lot of body fat in a short amount of time, I cut out stuff even more. And that's when, for the very first time in my life, I started to have problems with overeating. So you really do not want to restrict yourself too much. It's good to take care of your health, but don't overdo it. You can have every food that you want. Again, the poison is in the dose. Speaking of good and bad foods, eating much meat is not unhealthy. Whenever you hear that you should not eat much meat, most likely the people behind that have a big interest in animal welfare and or the environment, which are very important things, don't get me wrong. But when you're just thinking about your health, meat is very, very beneficial. As long as it's lean meat from healthy, happy animals. Red meat, if you have problems with your heart health or your cardiovascular health, can be a bit tricky. But even a good lean steak has so many beneficial effects on your body, especially for women, because we tend to be low in iron. Including some red meat and especially a lot of white meat into your diet is very, very beneficial if you like meat and if you eat meat from, a moral perspective. If you don't, that's fine, but then get your blood tested because you are very likely deficient in some micronutrients. But if you do eat meat, focus on lean, clean meat, not processed, and always keep the environment and animal welfare in mind. Something else I learned that I wish I knew sooner is that food timing does indeed matter, even if you are a normal person, not a bodybuilder. If you don't give your body protein after your workout, your muscles can't repair, meaning your workout is basically for the trash. Not entirely, obviously, but you won't see much results. But that's maybe something you've heard of. But have you also heard that carbs are very, very important before and after a workout, even if you're a woman, even if you're not a bodybuilder? And that's because carbs before a workout give your body enough energy to actually follow through with the workout. But also, again, if you're a woman, it keeps the stress level not too high, because again, if your body is too hungry, energy depleted, and then you put extra stress on your body by working out, that's a no-no. That's not something that you want. And second, after a workout, your body needs carbs to replenish its glycogen stores, aka giving your muscles back the energy that they lost during exercise. You don't need to make yourself crazy with this unless you're a bodybuilder, yes, but keeping this in mind will help you so much with seeing progress. Speaking of hindering your progress, if you want to find out which other myths about fitness and nutrition are bullshit and are probably keeping you from seeing any results or the results that you deserve, check out this video right here. Other than that, thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next one.